Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you with the most up-to-date political, economic, and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. Let's jump in.
Happy Thursday, everybody. Yesterday, Wednesday, Taiwan experienced a major earthquake near Hualien on the central east coast of the island. It is the biggest Taiwan has seen since 1999, when an earthquake killed 2,400 people. That tragedy compelled the authorities to mandate stricter building codes, which likely saved lives yesterday, where the death toll so far is 9 persons, 1,000 injured. The quake, which the US Geological Survey said measured 7.4 in magnitude, was felt as far as Shanghai and China's southeastern provinces. Taiwan's Central Weather Administration recorded the earthquake at 7.2. Around 14,000 households were without water and 1,000 households were without power. The impact to semiconductor manufacturing so far looks small and manageable. In a statement a few hours after the quake, Taiwan's massive chip maker, TSMC, expressed, quote, "There is no damage to our critical tools, including all of our extreme ultraviolet lithography tools," end quote, adding that a small number of tools were damaged at some facilities, but the company is deploying all available resources to ensure a full recovery. The earthquake also caused major disruptions to public transport in mainland China, with several coastal provinces reporting tremors that prompted suspensions and major delays in rail services. In Beijing, a spokesperson for the Taiwan Affairs Office of the State Council said that the mainland is highly concerned about the situation and extends, quote, "sincere sympathy to the Taiwan compatriots affected by the disaster," end quote. State media was also relatively well behaved, expressing sympathy for those affected. However, while many netizens posted kind messages online, nationalist sentiment also reared its ugly head. In a rare move, Chinese social media platform Weibo issued a notice warning users not to mock the earthquake, adding that 20 accounts had already been suspended for making fun of the disaster. Popular comments included calls to invade the island while it was distracted by the earthquake, and calling the disaster a double blessing because the quake hurts Taiwan and the resulting potential tsunami could hurt Japan too. The PLA also sent 30 warplanes and 9 vessels into the seas and around the skies above Taiwan. Next up, we move to a quick economic update. Yesterday saw the publication of the Caixin China General Services Business Activity Index, which seeks to provide an independent snapshot of operating conditions in industries such as retail and tourism. According to the index, activity in China's services sector grew at a quicker rate in March, picking up 0.2 points in March from the previous month to 52.7. This marks a 15-month streak of expansion as both exports and domestic demand picked up pace. The services sector contributed for 54.6% of China's GDP last year. The official services PMI released on Sunday by the National Bureau of Statistics rose 1.4 points to 52.4 in March. Chinese financial media outlet Caixin, reporting on the news, writes that the sustained recovery in the sector was driven by accelerating growth in new orders, with new export orders increasing at the quickest pace in 9 months. Employment contracted for the second consecutive month, although the rate of job cutting eased from February and was only marginal. The Caixin China General Composite PMI, which tracks both manufacturing and services, came in at 52.7 in March, up 0.2 points from the previous month. Wang Zhe, the senior economist behind the indexes, expressed that, quote, "employment in both sectors continued to contract, while input and output prices remained low, indicating that sluggish demand persisted," end quote. Wang added, quote, "considering the current economic hurdles, namely persistent downward economic pressure, subdued employment, and insufficient demand, achieving the ambitious goal for economic growth this year of around 5% will require consistent efforts to accelerate growth while improving the quality and efficiency of economic development," end quote. Next up, yesterday saw the publication in top party outlet The Study Times of a long piece by the Office of the Central Financial Commission and the Central Financial Work Commission about rectification in the financial sector and so-called financial development with Chinese characteristics. The language in the piece is significant. Quote, "First, we must tirelessly rectify the 4 winds: formalism, bureaucratism, hedonism, and extravagance, resolutely eliminate erroneous ideologies such as financial elitism, money worship, and allying with the West, and vigorously promote a pragmatic, clean, and frugal ethos. Second, we must place disciplined construction in an even more prominent position. Third, we must continue to exert effort to push deeper in eliminating the soil and conditions that breed corruption, adhere to no forbidden zones, full coverage and zero tolerance, and continuously maintain a high-pressure stance on preventing financial corruption. Fourth, we must strictly implement carpet-style inspection and rectification. End quote. The implications are clear. Quote, the good times for bankers and financial professionals are over, and language like this may send more chills and signal more corruption crackdowns throughout the financial sector. I still think if the leadership wants to demonstrate how serious they are about remaking the financial sector, then the corruption investigations will need to bag some more major industry players, and at least one very senior, retired tiger. End quote. Next up, we have a very significant geopolitical development to cover. But just quickly, if you're getting some value from today's episode, I have a huge favor to ask. That is to like and subscribe. And Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee links are also in the description below. I rely primarily on your support, your financial support, to keep going. So this is also a huge help. Thank you so much, everybody, for the ongoing support. Next up, this is a particularly interesting development, and we're going to spend some time unpacking it. Southeast Asia is a very important emerging region. The population is in the hundreds of millions. It is a young population, and the markets are dynamic and growing. It also sits between the Asian giants of China and India, as well as the critical sea lanes which connect Persian Gulf energy to East Asian markets and East Asian manufacturers to European consumers. Southeast Asia in the coming years will increasingly become a battleground for large and middle powers alike, for geopolitical advantage and market access. According to a new comprehensive report by the Singapore-based ISEAS Yusof Ishak Institute called the State of Southeast Asia 2024 Survey, for the first time ever, Southeast Asia's elite appeared to be leaning more towards the PRC over the United States. The survey showed that 50.5% of respondents opted for China and 49.5% preferred the US. If ASEAN, that is the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, had to pick sides between the two. But as we will see, this preference is being driven by fear. Now, it's important to note that these are surveys of elites, not popular surveys, but elites do possess disproportionate influence over policy and public debate. Their views are important to follow and understand. According to the Institute, respondents came from 5 affiliation categories. 1. Academia, think tankers and researchers. 2. Private sector representatives. 3. Civil society, NGO or media representatives. 4. Government officials. And 5. Regional or international organization personnel. Thus, this is a good cross-section of the different kinds of elite within these countries. 1,994 respondents were polled across 10 Southeast Asian nations. This report is very long. It's about 70 pages. We will examine some of the most salient points as it relates to China and the wider competition in the region. We will now quote selected excerpts from the survey report directly. The second top concern is the fear of Southeast Asian powers becoming an arena of major power competition, and that its member states may become major power proxies by a very tight margin of 76.4% of regional respondents. The October 7th attacks by Hamas on Israeli civilians and the ensuing humanitarian crisis in Gaza occupies the region's mind share, 46.5%. The second-ranked concern is aggressive behavior in the South China Sea, 39.9%, followed by concerns over the 2-year-long Russia-Ukraine war and global scam operations, 39.4%, tied at third place. Aggressive behavior in the South China Sea is the Philippines, 90.2%, and Vietnam, 72.5% top concern, the region's 2 frontline South China Sea claimant states. Southeast Asians recognize that any hostilities in the Taiwan Strait would have significant implications for the region, given the geopolitical proximity and economic ties with both China and Taiwan. Economic interest prevails, with the largest group of respondents, 44.2%, expressing concern that such a conflict scenario would severely disrupt supply chains between China, Taiwan, and Southeast Asia. The second largest group of respondents, 25%, fear that regional countries would be forced to choose between the US and China, with Singapore at 37.7%. Perceptions of China as the most influential economic power in Southeast Asia remain high, with 59.5% of regional respondents sharing this view. The strongest sentiments come from Laos, 77.5%, Thailand, 70.6%, and Malaysia, 66.7%. Even as the perception of China's economic influence remains steadfast and strong, the majority of regional respondents are worried about its growing economic influence in the region, 67.4%, as opposed to those who welcome it, 32.6%. Most of this concern stems from Vietnam, 87.7%, Myanmar, 87.6%, and Thailand, 80.3%. The US remains the third highest ranked in terms of perceptions on economic influence in the region, and the sentiment has been gradually on the rise. 52% of respondents welcomed the US's growing economic influence, but only marginally over those who are concerned about this trend, 48%. In a notable shift in sentiments, China has experienced a surge in popularity among respondents from Southeast Asia, climbing from 38.9% last year to 50.5% this year, edging ahead to become the preferred alignment choice in the region. This trend is particularly evident among respondents from Malaysia, 75.1%, Indonesia, 73.2%, Laos, 70.6%, Brunei, 70.1%, and Thailand, 52.2%. Notably, Indonesia, Laos, and Malaysia have all benefited significantly from China's Belt and Road Initiative. The robust trade and investment relations witnessed a remarkable increase of more than 20 percentage points in their preference for China compared to 2023. Conversely, the US has seen a decline in its popularity, dropping from 61.1% last year to 49.5% this year. However, it still commands majority support from the Philippines, 83.3%, Vietnam, 79%, Singapore, 61.5%, Myanmar, 57.7%, and Cambodia, 55%. Its backing from these countries has generally waned, except for the Philippines, which experienced a notable increase in confidence in the US. This uptick follows the Philippines' closer alliance with the US in addressing China's aggression in the South China Sea. More than a fifth of regional respondents stated a preference for living and working in another Southeast Asian country, 22.4%, if given the opportunity to relocate, followed by Japan, 17.1%, and the US, 15.9%. As we can see, China is very low down this list. Japan maintained its solid lead as the region's most trusted power, 58.9%, with the US coming in second, 42.4%, followed by the EU, 41.5%, China, 24.8%, and India, 24.2%. Among those who believe in Japan, 36.5% think that Japan is a responsible stakeholder that respects and champions international law. The region's positive view towards the EU is largely attributed to its leadership in championing human rights and climate change, which is considered an asset for global peace and security, 31.7%. Among those who trust the US, 45% believe that the US has vast economic resources and the political will to provide global leadership. More than half of the respondents, 50.1%, has either little confidence, 34.8%, or no confidence, 15.3%, in China to do the right thing in contributing to global peace, security, prosperity, and governance. Among those who trust China, 53.1% attribute this to China's vast economic resources and strong political will to provide global leadership. Only 9.9% of respondents agree that China's military power is an asset for global security. Levels of distrust towards China are higher than levels of trust in Southeast Asian countries, except for Laos. The distrust levels are most pronounced in the Philippines, 71.1%, Myanmar, 65.6%, Vietnam, 56.5%, and Singapore, 51.3%. Among those who distrust China, 45.5% think that China's economic and military power can be used to threaten their country's interests and sovereignty. Here ends the direct quote. On Tuesday, during an online seminar on this report, Danny Quah, Dean of the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy at the National University of Singapore, expressed, quote, "It seems like this is the beginning of a trend, as this is the first time China has actually edged past the United States. But if we look at the underlying data, it is actually more like a seesaw pattern than a trend," end quote. Singapore-based outlet Fulcrum, which is affiliated with the institute behind this study report, observed on it, quote, "It would be easy to attribute all and sundry to China's rising influence in the region eating the US's lunch. But Southeast Asian countries are clear-eyed about China's role in the region. The majority of regional respondents still maintain a sense of unease and worry about China's economic, 67%, and political and strategic influence, 73.5%. The level of unease about China's political strategic influence saw a 5 percentage point increase. For Southeast Asia, China may be an important economic partner, but China remains its greatest security concern due to fears of its growing dominance domestically in their countries, 38.5%. Use of strong arm tactics in potential theatres of conflict, such as the South China Sea and the Mekong, 37.2%. Use of economic tools as punishment, 35%. And interference in their country's domestic affairs, 33.5%. End quote. And thus, one of the new great games wages on. Okay, that is today's episode of China Update. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Let me know in the comments below what you think of some of what we covered today. I'm especially interested in your thoughts on this last piece, on the evolving elite views in Southeast Asian nations. Thank you again for listening. Have a great Thursday, and I will see you all tomorrow.